Well, things have kind of returned to normal, at least as normal as we're gonna get anyway, with, Anne Rice and being the 13th book in a series of 15. But Prince Lestat, like I said, is the 13th book of the whole Vampire Chronicles and is like the first book in the like concluding trilogy era. This whole series definitely comes in like eras. So jumping right into like a quick summary really quick, we're basically following several characters at this moment. We're not just stuck with one titular character, we're not just stuck with our one prince. Here, it's called Prince Lestat, but it's not just about him. Because now the entire vampire world is being accosted by this disembodied voice that everyone can like hear. And it's convincing a lot of the elders, not all of them, some are like strong enough to ignore him, but some of the elders and some of the youngers too, kind of later on, some of the fledglings, to like burn and destroy almost all of the younger vampires. You're not helping here, darling. In regards to eras, actually, this is like the second burning, I think they called it. The first one being like Akasha waking up in the 80s. Well, this is the second time something similar is kind of happening. So all of our vampires then, all of our characters are trying to come together to actually form like a pretty solid community, calling themselves a tribe, to figure out what the hell is going on. Some are more like reluctant than others, but there's that common theme of just coming together and that community, that camaraderie. It's just nice. And it's a stark difference to almost every book prior. So in regards to like the, writing style, like I mentioned, more characters, more of like a linear narrative sense. But anyway, her writing style like solidifies here into something new and refreshing for both old and new readers, I think. Like it feels like a proper evolution of her writing style back from like the 70s. This is kind of what I wish she jumped to in regards to, Blackwood Farm and Blood Canticle. And I was kind of curious while reading this if like a newcomer could jump in right here, maybe reading like the first three, Interview, Lestat, and Queen of the Damned, and then like jumping here. I wouldn't recommend it, but that was a thought in my mind of like OG versus new readers kind of thing. And like I said, I don't recommend it. There are like required readings where I would at least say read like Armand's book and Marius's book, Pandora's for some things, and that's like mainly it. Tales of the Body Thief and Man are like reference, but they're not like plot relevant. I guess technically Armand's not either, but they're more for like character context. But if you don't read them in order of like publication date, you're gonna be missing a lot of pieces. So as like a newcomer, if you want to just jump in here, don't do it yet. You can skip Blackwood Farm and Blood Canticle and Vittoria the Vampire. I'll get to that in a second, but those three you can skip. The rest are basically required reading. And I mentioned those three that you can skip, Vittorio's, Quinn, and Mona's, because they're not mentioned. They're not mentioned in this book at all. Like, canonically, I think they happened, but also at the end of Blood Canticle, Quinn and Mona went off to stay with Makare and Maharet. Like, the Makare and Maharet, just get the newbies. I'm sorry for the cattail just walking around. But they're not there. They're just not there. I'm okay with them not being there, but they're just not there. Vittoria was also just not mentioned. But also, I thought this was like a little sad. Merrick isn't mentioned. Merrick isn't mentioned once. Like, almost none of the Mayfairs really are. And that one felt like a little bit off to me. I can kind of get why, given like the series of events leading up to this point, and like what's canon and what's not, and it's technically canon, but it's also kind of not. It's weird. It muddies the waters a little bit. Merrick does. There's another tidbit that feels a little weird, where Marius quickly says at one point that like David recounted his story, recorded his story. Like, hold on, no, he didn't. Marius, you told that whole story to Thorn. We were there. We were in Thorn's head the whole time, not David's. But it makes more sense canonically if it was David, because he recorded Armand's book too. So like, it makes sense that she's retconning that at least to be like, yeah, Thorn is still here. But Marius then retold his entire life story to David again. Okay, I'll take it, but okay. And I will also argue in that point, I don't think Thorn is like that hugely an important character. There's a lot of background characters, there's a lot of characters to keep track of now. And Thorn isn't, sure, he's interesting, but he's not one of the like important ones, and he's not really an interesting side character the way Bianca is. He's kind of easily replaced by David. And this kind of proves that. Anne Rice is technically like retconning, sure, but she's using her own material to rewrite some elements to have it come out smoother, I think. And it does. She's working with what she has. Okay, so now we're going to get into some spoilers because there are some other things I want to mention that are very like book specific and like plot specific to this one. So here we're getting into spoilers. Also, spoilers in general for the other, 14, 12 in the series. I miscounted. The whole Vampire Chronicles, okay? We're getting really deep in the series now. So, spoilers abound. And on that note, in regards to her like rewrites too, I think she does still it she has a plan in mind. She does have a plan in mind for this like little ending trilogy here because she's introducing so many new characters still, like a lot of new characters, especially in this one. Some more important than others, but this world is so rich with interesting character dynamics. It works. It does work. She has a plan here at least. She has a plan, but she's also trying new things. That feels like a quick summary of what's kind of going on here. And I loved this specifically. We get to reconnect with so many older characters too that were just like quickly mentioned. The random dude in Interview with the Vampire, Antoine, he gets a whole chapter here. Quick recap of Interview with the Vampire. After like Louis and Claudia kind of like kill Lestat for the first time, he turns a guy to help, save his own life called Antoine, who he was kind of having like a little affair with, and he was going to pull him into their little family. Didn't quite work out. Well, Antoine is back. He's a fully fledged character here now, and we're going through his whole little life story, quick little recaps of his life story, but also him recounting those scenes and like meeting Lestat and being infatuated with him and all of the things Lestat promised him and loved him for, and then was kind of abandoned because that's Lestat's way. And it was tragic. It was sad. That I connected with. That was great. That was new, that was refreshing, but it was still revisiting the older stuff. That was a good combination of stuff. So glad Antoine is here. And I love how he integrates with the whole little family and meeting like Louis and Armand and Sybil. And he's like a violinist. Antoine is a violinist. He's playing the piano with Sybil. He's playing the violin while she's playing piano. It's just cute. It's just nice. He's seamless. He's integrated there quite seamlessly. But yeah, long story short, that's what I really loved about this series is the blending of the old versus new. And on the flip side, there's a lot of new characters too, like I mentioned, some more important than others. And I kind of think that there's too many. There's a lot to keep track of. It's not impossible. If anything, there's a glossary now at the end of this with each character and like who their maker is and what they're connected to. So there's a lot of threads to get a hold of. And still sticking with the new characters, I love Farid, I love Seth, and I love Victor. I love their introductions. They felt the most important. Obviously, like the villain guy we meet later on. I'll get to him in a second. But Seth, Farid, and Victor, they're interesting. I'm glad they're here. And I feel like in the same vein of like those three, Victor's mother is not really as important it seems. Like obviously she is because Farid is a doctor. He's a vampire doctor who wants to do like interesting little scientific experiments to kind of just see what he can do with like vampire biology. And he kind of helps Lestat as a vampire make love to a woman. Her name is Flannery. She gets pregnant and she has an actual kid, just like a human boy. He's just a regular human boy. And then she gets turned into a vampire. Flannery gets turned into a vampire then. And then she's never really mentioned again. There's one scene where Lestat meets her, and then she's like casually mentioned by Victor a couple of times in Farid, but then that's it. Flannery was so interesting here. I feel like Flannery could have been like utilized better. But Victor is interesting. I like the addition of Victor. He doesn't feel like overly important, but again, it feels like the refresh of like we're getting to modern times, things are changing. Vampires are kind of getting into science now. Lestat has a son, a legitimate biological son, which I think Farid should have told him about, from day one in the experiment, because Farid was planning something here. He didn't quite tell Lestat his whole story. And along with Victor, Farid, and Seth, mostly along with Victor, we also get to meet Rose, who is Lestat's new adoptive daughter, I'll say. She's like, I don't want to say she's the new Claudia. Claudia is so much cooler because Rose is also not utilized well. She feels like a pet who has been traumatized. Rose is interesting because she's not here for any like grand plot sense. She's got a whole chunk of chapters here too in the narration, and like I got a little bored reading her stuff. Meanwhile, her stuff is the most traumatic crap ever. Like, why is this poor girl getting beaten when she's down over and over again? And it's not even it's not even to like spurn on the man's story. No, she's getting acid thrown in her face at one point. Like, why is that necessary right now? It just feels like a lot. And I also kind of get that Rose is meant to be representative, I think, of Lestat, actually coming into that responsibility of actually being a good father, kind of stepping away to let her do her own thing and grow up as a regular like woman. But at the same time, he's so hard to reach, he's still kind of neglectful when he needs her the most, i.e., having acid thrown in her face. So he's still trying to care for a child. It's still not going well. It's not his fault, though. The acid was not his fault. But yet, Rose doesn't feel overly necessary for for this story. Like, she's not even used as like the final kidnapped victim to be the damsel in distress. No, Victor is. Victor is kidnapped at one point, and he handles himself fine. But during that whole sequence, when Victor is the one kidnapped, Rose is kept in like a sweet little corner with her pillows and a little blanket, and so that she can rest and like be okay and be watched over. She's a pet. The Victor and Farid stuff was at least like interesting. It was new and interesting. I was just thinking, kind of sticking with like Farid and Victor, mostly Farid right now. I do like Farid as an addition here. I love the idea of like a vampire doctor who just kind of wants to see what he can do. We got like a mad scientist. It's fun. But this he definitely represents the idea that like the vampire world is trying to actually finally understand science. And it's trying to explain ghostly ethereal things in a very scientific sense, but it's not really doing it that well. Like I can see Farid trying to explain away a ghost or trying to like figure out how a ghost works, of like how this ghost is like physically here with me right now. But Lestat is also thinking in the exact same kind of narrative writing style, even of like Lestat is seeing a ghost as like an accumulation of physical particles in front of him that he can see and feel and touch. The see and feel and touch thing is fine, but like the particle of clouds, it's a ghost, it's a dead guy. You don't need to like explain it that much, I feel. It felt like too much science was trying to be interjected in here, and it was kind of making a disconnect for me. But that science theme as well is trying to connect to Amel. Because there's a whole dynamic going on with the disembodied spirit of this guy named Amel, who is the sacred vampire core trapped in Makare now. He was the core in Akasha, like asleep and dormant just like her, but then when Makare kind of took the sacred core into herself, the core kind of woke up. I love that. I love it. And now that the core, Amel, has come to like sentience, he doesn't want to be in Makare because she's also not like 100% there. He's like trapped and confined in her body, and he's also realizing that like the more vampires there are, the weaker he is. He's spread thin. Anyway, as the story progresses, we come to like sympathize with Amel because the whole scientific particle ethereal ghostliness is trying to connect to him as well. It's trying to like describe what he is. And the story wants us to sympathize with Amel, and I do to an extent, and Lestat certainly sympathizes with him, like from the go. Lestat does bring up a good point that, like, yes, Amel has killed hundreds, but also we kill every single night. Should we not give him a little leeway here? I get it, but also the whole thing about vampires killing is that they only kill the evildoer, right? Well, Amel was also kind of slaughtering a bunch of innocent vampires. That's not quite the same. So, long story short, I did try kind of describing certain events that happened around like the end, more for like little reactions from myself, but like there's a lot. But long story very short, Amel kind of ends up inside Lestat then, making him the new king of the damned, or prince of the damned. And it's a good, sad series of events that lead to it. It's the stuff that happens to Maharet and Makare are so tragic. It's just good. We also the villain that I mentioned earlier, his name is Roshamandes. Yeah, Roshamandes. I might be saying that wrong. I'm sorry, but he's in the back. They do call him Roche for short too, so I'll call him Roche. But we meet him and how he was kind of connected to Amel. Amel was kind of manipulating him. Roche was kind of into it and was kind of going along with the idea to like be the new king of the damned himself, but it didn't work out. There's a whole thing going on. I don't want to spoil it, point for point, beat for beat, plot wise, because it is honestly like a good book and I want y'all to read it too. But yeah, the whole thing with Maharet and Makare, everything with them was just desperate and melancholy and just that Anne Rice sad. There is simultaneously so much happening within this story. Like, even just trying to condense the ending, I couldn't quite do it. There's so much going on at the same time, but the plot progression is also really slow. Not in a bad way. And, like, at this point, you're used to it with the Anne Rice slow progression. So, like, it's fine. I'm here for it. But it's interesting. But yeah, the main thing that made this book for me was finally that like balanced combination of old versus new writing styles, character dynamics, new character dynamics, and them kind of rediscovering older character dynamics and trying to like apologize to each other. And like there's a really good scene of just Lestat and Louis hugging in a hallway. That's just sweet. And the last chapter really made this book for me. Like, I was having a good time anyway, but the last chapter is just Louis hanging out by himself in a garden, but with his family nearby, and he's content. He's content. He's okay, and he's gonna go off and find Lestat. That was Alice's tale. He's gonna go off and find Lestat and just have a conversation, because those two need to talk. Oh, my heart. Oh, my boys. That last chapter, just reconnecting it to Louis, that just made it. Now, I am looking forward to Realms of Atlantis. I know it's called Prince Lestat and the Realms of Atlantis, but I'm just calling it Realms of Atlantis. I am looking forward to that one. I do remember more from that one as well. I know that's the one where we get like the aliens. And I do already have a video of that one up. So I don't want to make a whole other video talking about the same book all over again. So I'm going to read it, obviously, and I'll give an update on my thoughts in the next video, but I am going to jump to Blood Communion. And I will admit, I'm a little sad that my Vampire Chronicles journey is almost at an end. We're finally in the good stuff again. But in the meantime, feel free to like and subscribe. Check out the Realms of Atlantis video if you want to. That's technically already there. I filmed it, like, I'll admit, years ago. So like I said, next video of at least the Vampire Chronicles, I'll update my thoughts there. I do say Amel's name weird, like the whole time. I don't know why. I didn't realize I was doing that. But anyway, feel free to like and subscribe. I think I said that. And I'll see y'all later. Bye.